Well, we're going to get started then. I'm going to just press here continue. Welcome to today's English area webinar. My name is Maite Mariño. I'm the director of the School of Arts, Culture, Language for the Faculty of Finance, Government, and International Relations at the Externado University. Kind of a long name, but thanks everyone for being here. I don't know if we have guests from Externado or from other places. It'd be nice actually if you tell us via chat, if that's okay, in the chat box where you are joining us from, what city you're in, or if you're at a different university. That would be interesting to know. So today we're going to talk about the U.S. elections. This U.S. elections have been so contentious, and it's just been going in broad it's brought so many issues, so not just in the United States, but kind of abroad. And there's so much information, so much misinformation, and it feels like the campaign has been going on forever. It's just the longest campaign ever. And finally, elections are around the corner. As you know, Tuesday, November 3rd is when the elections are happening. We were just talking informally before we got started. Some of us have already voted. I voted a few weeks ago now, and we'll see what's going to happen on Tuesday. So today, to talk about the elections, how elections have impacted people's lives, we have three wonderful guests. Thanks for being here. We have Michael Forrest, who is a professor at Externado, our English professor, but he's originally from Seattle. And then we have Tara Thompson, who's actually in Seattle, and she's from Seattle today. So two representatives kind of from Seattle. And we have Carolyn Bancroft, and she is from Minnesota, and she's joining us from Minnesota right now. She's in Bogota usually. And of course, David Castrillon, who's going to help us with moderating this discussion. He's a figure professor, a CIPE researcher, an expert in US-China relations. And so it's really great to have you guys here. So before we get started, we'd like to, just for everyone who's here with us, we'd like this to be as interactive as possible. So in the first section, we're going to have a discussion or conversation, and then we would really like to entertain your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the chat box as we go. And the second section of today's forum is going to be answering your questions. So we'll be also sharing some other links in the chat as we go along. So welcome everyone, and David, the webinar is all yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Maite. Thank you to the school that you lead, and to the faculty for organizing this event, to our excellent panelists who are here with us today, and to all of our guests who I hope, like you mentioned, I hope that all of our guests, that they write a lot of questions, that they interact, and that they make the most out of this. So I am the moderator, and as the people here know, moderating debates is hard, and it's very easy to get it wrong. So I'm gonna be, like a hawk with time. I'm gonna make sure that we keep this conversation civil, and I'm gonna start with a little bit of a context, about the election. It's gonna be, 5-8 minutes at most, but I think 5 is gonna be enough. So as some of you know, this has been portrayed, this has been discussed as the most important election in American history, right? We say that every election, but maybe this one really is it. And we're not only saying it, but we see that the campaigns are precisely kind of like selling it as such. Every campaign, the Biden campaign, the Trump campaign, has sold this as an election for the heart of America. So this is an election where life and death are in the balance, no matter where you stand. On the side of Biden, right? Biden has really promised a return to normalcy. He has talked about, going back to the golden era, or at least taking a step back from the years of Trump. Biden has also really promised that his presidency will represent a rejection of everything that Trump has stood for: racism, xenophobia, misogyny, isolationism, unilateralism, among so many other things. So, Biden campaign really talks about these things. On the side of Trump, the Trump campaign has also talked about this as an election for the heart of America. And he has really pushed, the narrative that his campaign is about keeping America great. He made America great in the first 40 years, and now what he proposes is to keep it great. He has promised also to continuing draining the swamp, right? Trump has said that he is an outsider who has gone to Washington to really fix a very broken politics that didn't represent the people. And more recently, Trump and his campaign has used the discourse of socialism and Castro-Chavismo to say that these are the enemies of America that stand at its gate. So Trump has really portrayed himself as a defender of everything that makes America a great civilization, let's put it that way, while the other side maybe represents the worst of it. So beyond this election matters a lot because of who the US is and what's happening to it today. The US continues to be the most important country in the world, including for us here in Colombia. What happens in the US will have great impacts. No matter what the issue, no matter what the region, this election matters. And it matters maybe today more than ever because the world faces infinite threats. The threat of climate change is one of those. The threats posed by the coronavirus pandemic, the health crisis, the economic crisis, and who is in leadership in America will determine in many ways what happens to us. Finally, this election matters, I think, because of what's happening to the US. America is in many ways declining as a great power. It is not the same country that it was 30 years ago. And having a good statesman or woman in the White House is important to manage the many changes that are occurring to the world and to the US. The last thing that I want to talk about is what is the outlook 6 days before Election Day? So where are we? And I'm sure our guests will talk a lot more about this. But where are we today? The facts speak for themselves. Biden is still in the lead. A website, and I don't know if someone can link to it, but 538 right now gives him an 88 out of 100 chance of winning. So things look pretty good for Biden. Another, one of these analysis websites, Real Clear Politics, gives him an edge of 7.4% in the national average and of 3.6% in the battleground states. Things look good for Biden right now. We also have a dynamic of early voting. 75 million people have already voted. Maite is one of them. Michael is one of them. Tara is one of them. There you go. So people have already voted. This already represents more than half of all the people that voted in 2016. It will be interesting to see what happens with that. But although things look good for Biden, the race is tightening, as it usually does. It may be too early to say with complete certainty who will win, because Biden only has a little bit more of an edge today than Clinton had 4 years ago, and Clinton lost. Florida today is tied. Biden's advantage in Pennsylvania is shrinking, and with Trump in the mix, we can't assume anything. Anything can really happen. He can win again. So that's where we are right now. And to discuss this, this crazy election season, we have then 3 distinguished panelists here with us today: Michael Forrest, Tara Marino, and Carolyn Bancroft. So I think what we're going to ask you to do now is to please briefly introduce yourselves, tell us who you are voting for or have voted for, and what are some of the most important issues, that you think are important in this election season. So who wants to start?
I'll start. I'm Tara Marino. I'm in Seattle. I voted for Biden. I'm much more progressive personally than Biden is, but I think that Biden needs to be president. He's a candidate for all the people. For Biden to be effective, we need a Democratic Senate also. So that's something else to look at. Look at the candidates for Senate, because we need the Senate to be Democratic for him to be able to put through his programs. I believe that the democracy of the United States is on the line. Trump is showing signs of wanting to impose a very authoritarian government. He is already, and I think it'll get much worse if he's allowed to continue. So I think that our democracy is at stake in this election. There are many other issues that I'm interested in. The virus is a big one. Trump has declared that the virus is over. It's done, no more problem. And he doesn't want to talk to scientists or doctors. So I think Biden does. I believe in doctors and scientists for many things, but especially for the virus, also for climate change. Trump has just gotten rid of the main climate scientist in the United States, and he's going to get rid of others. So I'd like to see scientists in charge of climate change. Healthcare is another issue. Fair taxes, police reform, gun control, I'm interested in. And another one that is big right now is voting rights. The Republicans are trying to take away people's voting rights in many different ways. They're actively doing that right now, and they might be able to steal the election by discounting or discarding people's votes. So that's kind of a summary of where I'm in. And I think I know everyone else needs to give the same, but we want to be sure to talk about the Electoral College at some point.
Thanks, Tara. If I can, I'll continue because I'm a fellow Washingtonian. I'm also from Seattle, actually originally from Alaska, but grew up in Seattle. I'm a registered voter in Seattle. And like Tara just mentioned, the vote this year is the most important of our lifetime. We hear that a lot, like David said. However, it does have much more importance this year, I feel, than any other election in my lifetime. And that's a long lifetime. And so I too, like Tara, the only political candidate I've ever given money to and supported was Bernie Sanders. I loved Bernie Sanders. I still love him, and I think he was a great option. Joe Biden was never my preferred option. In fact, of all of the candidates that were up there for the Democratic nomination, Joe Biden was one of my least favorites. Nevertheless, I think he is a great remedy for this country at this moment with the divisiveness and it just feels so absolutely nasty and political. And quite frankly, in my perspective, I just have a huge case of Trump fatigue. I just don't know, quite frankly, how at this point I will deal with watching my country from afar, from Colombia, with a president who on a daily basis embarrasses the country, embarrasses scientists, intellectuals, just, he, well, I don't want to get into his character that much just because I think, clearly for me, that's what's lacking in his leadership is just a vision for America and character. I just feel like he's just working mostly, obviously for the Republican Party, but also for his own self-interest and forwarding, plans and policies that benefit perhaps him and his family. What else can I tell you about me? Yeah, I already voted. I voted for Biden, of course. I hope that we will see a Biden Harris ticket in the presidential office next week. I really think, and we'll probably talk about this later, that one of the issues that we're facing that's really going to be interesting is the fear sown in the public so far by President Trump. He's very crafty in terms of voter fraud, in terms of setting things up. He knows he's behind. He knows this could actually be a landslide loss for him. However, he does also know how to rally his base, how to get people motivated. But what worries me most is just the fact that he is out there putting doubt into people's minds that somehow the election is rigged, that somehow there's going to be voter fraud, and that it will, we're not going to know who's the next president next Tuesday. And probably, I don't know. I hope we do have a definitive win or loss. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
So I think
Michael?
it's my turn, correct?
That's right.
Well, my name is Carolyn, and I was born and raised in the state of Minnesota, but I've lived for many years in Colombia, and I've voted from abroad for many, many years, more than I've lived in Colombia, sometimes successfully. It's always been a question for me whether or not my vote has been counted when you vote absentee. And that question is bigger than ever this year. I voted as early as I could for Biden. I like Michael and Tara too, I think, was not a big fan of Biden. In fact, he was probably at the bottom of my list initially. But I remember when I was quite young, having long drawn out debates with classmates from college about whether or not it was worthy to vote against somebody rather than to vote from your heart. So that was always a question for me because, for example, my father voted for Ralph Nader. And that was, I can't remember now. And David, when you were talking about the most important US election in history, I think that it is maybe the most important election globally in a way, because precisely of the impact that Donald Trump has had in the past 4 years. And sometimes I think I've always talked about, for example, to my children who are all of voting age now, about what it was like the first time I voted. That was 1980, also in the state of Oregon, and Ronald Reagan won that election. And I remember being so distraught from that victory and thinking that the world was coming to an end and that Ronald Reagan would be the worst president ever. How could he lead our country? And then he won again 4 years later, which was a lesson to me because as a young person, I didn't think that, I didn't understand this whole idea of incumbency, that it's difficult for a president running in his second term to lose. It's actually uncommon. But so I tell my children this all the time. Oh, my first election was Ronald Reagan. What a drama that was. And actually, all of the elections that I've participated in have been emotional and significant to what I think is my engagement in politics. I wanted to point out that I am not a political analyst in any way, but I did study international relations. And so I'm very engaged in the issues. I've always been very engaged, particularly in foreign policy issues, and active too. And so that's basically why Ronald Reagan's election bothered me so much. And the curious thing now looking back is that Ronald Reagan is considered the decent Republican
Hmm.
president. And he was awful
It was awful.
for many reasons. And he left difficult legacies that took many, many years to overcome. So the emotional side of voting is really fun, or not, I shouldn't say fun, but I think it's something worth talking about. And I don't vote for the presidential elections in Colombia because I'm not a citizen. Boy, if I could, it would be an emotional thing. And so for example, when Barack Obama was elected in 2004, I stayed up all night and watched the whole system of results, and I thought it was the most fantastic thing. Not that I agreed with Barack Obama on some issues, particularly foreign policy issues or war. He was unsuccessful at demobilizing troops and that kind of thing. But to have the first Black president in the history of the United States was fantastic in my view. And then when Donald Trump was elected, and I was very excited to take my girls to vote for their first presidential election. And we went down to the Colombo Center on 19th and voted. And then we sat in a BBC bar and drank beer to watch the results, thinking very naively that it was going to be an easy victory for Clinton. I didn't like Clinton, by the way, much at all, but of course I would vote for her. And when Donald Trump won that night, I cried for a week that time because my perspective, my emotional perspective was that this was going to be the worst catastrophe for not only the United States, but for the rest of the world, for countries like Colombia. It would just, I was devastated. I think it took me a long time to recuperate from that. And so now I feel very almost cynical about what's going to take place in a week. Not cynical, but I have a sensation that it doesn't matter. My feeling about Donald Trump is his damage, all of the issues that Tara mentioned and Michael mentioned are extremely important issues to me. But I feel like Donald Trump has done the damage, and the damage is deep. And Biden, for all of his goodwill and his ability to negotiate things with the two sides of the parties, the two different parties, and he's got so much experience in Congress that he's really good at building bridges. But personally, that's not my idea of a great president. I'd rather have somebody like Bernie Sanders. But anyway, I feel like the damage has been done. And then I also have this perspective that I've been talking about endlessly for the past 4 years, which is that I think that the damage is done globally. And well, actually, I want to move away from that idea a little bit, because I think that it's really not Donald Trump that has done the damage, in my perspective. It's a system and an infrastructure that has been deteriorating for a bunch of years now. I don't know exactly how many, but the Electoral College and the process to nominate for the Supreme Court, and the divisions that have taken place in the United States are manifestations of the damage that's been building up for probably around the time of Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, if not before. And so I feel really frustrated because it's a bubbling cauldron of hot soup, and we're falling into something that's not very nice. And
Can I say one thing to Carolyn? I think
Well,
you're being
the,
very
hopefully,
naive.
yes.
The damage is not near what he will do in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you then to our three panelists for introducing ourselves and for speaking so passionately about the issues and the candidates. We know now a little bit more about you, and we have a lot more to hear from you in this next section. So we have now a section where I'm going to ask some questions. After this section, we're going to go to the questions by the audience. You can hear me, right? Yes. Okay. So we have divided this, Q&A in 3 segments. The first one is going to be more about the facts, right? Learning a little bit more about the elections. The second section is going to be about the candidates and the issues. And the third segment is going to be about this election season. The idea is to spend 5 minutes in the first one and 10 minutes each in the second and third one. So I think it won't be necessary for everyone to always, but of course, if you have something you want to say, please do. We, of course, that's why we have you here. We want to hear you out. So let's begin with the pedagogic educational section. I have 3 questions that I want to ask you. The first question basically is, how does this work? How do elections in the US work? Does each person's vote really count?
Good.
I love
So
that.
are you asking us as the panel?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
the
yes,
Electoral
yes.
College. So in the United States, we do not have a direct election. We vote in each state, and whichever candidate in a state wins the election gets the delegates to the Electoral College. Delegates go to the Electoral College and they vote for president. In my state, Washington State, we have 8 delegates. We will vote for Biden, or Biden will win the majority of votes. So all 8 delegates will go to the Electoral College from Washington for Biden. So as you follow the election right now, you're really only interested in the states that that are in doubt. California, for example, is a state with the most Electoral College delegates, 55. They will all be for Biden. Florida has 29, and no one knows yet if they'll all be for Biden or if they'll all be for Trump. So you can follow Florida with more interest.
No, and
Texas is another state.
I jump
Now,
into, because
sure.
like what you just said about Florida becomes so pivotal. I mean, there are certain those swing states, the battleground states, as they call them, that's where Trump is right now, going back and forth between these states. Tara and I both voted in Washington, and David asked, does our vote count? Well, I voted for Biden. Of course, Biden will win Washington. Therefore, I could have skipped and not voted, and Biden would still win Washington, and nothing would be changed. So in some sense, we Americans do get that feeling that our vote perhaps doesn't, in some places, really count. It's just, well, I mean, it counts, but yet, because we don't have anything based on majority, it doesn't really make a huge difference. My vote.
Well, so the delegates from each state has to have decided who won the state by December 8th. That's going to be crucial because Trump is trying to sabotage that count. He's trying to steal the election. So if he can manage to convince someone in a state, one of the governors, that there's too much messiness, too much confusion by December 8th, those delegates can be chosen by the governor of the state rather than by the election. And Trump can do this for states that have Republican governors. That's one way he can steal it. That's very possible. At any rate, that's a key date, December 8th.
Okay.
The electors have to, so they have, the decision made in the state has to be made by December 14th. So those are our key dates right now, December 8th and 14th for it to be settled. And it might not be settled, but it has to be settled by December 14th. And then it goes on.
Great, thank you, Tara. So, so as you mentioned, there's this electoral college system where each state plus Washington, D.C., right, have a number of
Delegates.
right,
Elector,
the
well,
delegates,
electors. You
yeah,
can call them electors, yeah.
the delegates, and then it depends on who wins a state, who wins
It's winner
50% plus
takes all.
one in
Mhm.
general, right?
With the
Right.
exception of two
So,
states, but they're small.
right. So just to be clear, you talked about some states, Tara, California. Well, you actually talked about some battleground states like Florida. Are there
Florida
any
has
other big
29.
important states? Are there any other big states that everyone should, keep their eye out because they are these
Yes.
swing states that could go
That's
one way or
really
another?
the only states right now that we're interested in. Texas is another one, 38 delegates. Pennsylvania is key. And your state, the Michigan and the Wisconsins. I think Wisconsin will go for Biden,
Well,
but
so I just interject. I just looked up. I didn't know that Minnesota has 10 electoral seats. And Minnesota is an interesting state in the sense that it is traditionally blue, traditionally Democrat, and even progressive blue, socialist history and all, true socialist history actually. But Trump has been really clever, and his people have been very clever about dividing the state electorally. So there's a mining issue in the northern part of the state. And the miners traditionally were blue voters, but they're switching, and they've been pounding and pounding and pounding. It's not a swing state because 10 electoral votes aren't very many, but in the whole system of the electoral college is delicate because there are many people who say that it requires a reform. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's
We
kind of
wish it could be reformed, yeah. So Arizona is
Right.
another state that's in play. So
Yep.
you're interested in the vote in Arizona. Iowa is another state that you're interested in watching. But most of the states you're not interested in watching on November 3rd because most of them are just a given. For example,
Right.
my state.
except
Now,
that
on November 3rd, what we're hoping is that so many people have voted that there's enough votes on November 3rd that we can say, yeah, Biden won.
Great.
But if not,
We'll talk
they'll
more
keep
about
voting.
We'll talk
Counting.
more about November 3rd in our third segment. So I just want to
Okay.
ask you one additional question. It's going to be a short question. We have 2 minutes maximum. I would like some of you to tell us how you vote. So how does voting work, especially voting from overseas or voting, as you mentioned, Tara? How does it actually vote? Because
You mean
Colombians know
physically?
how do you vote? Where do you get
Oh,
the ballot?
Washington
So please
State
tell
is
us.
all mail. So every citizen in Washington State receives a ballot in the mail, and we can return it in the mail, or we can return it to a ballot box. There are ballot boxes in the city of Seattle. That's what I did, to be actually sure. That's an interesting point, though, because many people, because of the virus, especially, are voting by mail. And Trump has fixed the postal service, so it's very, very slow right now, like weeks slow. So in many states, ballots that go into the mail are not going to arrive on time. That's one of his tricks.
and each
So-
state has a different, or they
Yeah.
have varying rules about how ballots can be submitted. In some cases, in some states, especially Democratic states, traditionally Democratic states allow early voting, for example. So my family members are all voting as early as they can, with
Yeah.
this fear or with this conclusion that if there is a landslide, then the trickeries that the Republicans are going to try to play will be diminished as much as possible. If you can get the votes in and counted, that's another issue, is how the votes are counted. In some states, they're counted as they come in. In other states, they're counted on the day of. And the Republicans are interested in having only the day of because they want to make a big announcement.
They
want
want to trick.
and
And
then
maybe that's something that we should mention, though. The voting is different in every single state. It's ruled by every state. It's local in some places. And in fact, in some places, partisan officials oversee the vote.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Just to jump in here, I voted online. I received my ballot through my email, printed it, well, filled it out, printed it, signed it, and sent it in that way. So I didn't have to take the physical ballot itself anywhere.
Great.
And-
Thank
and
you.
that-
Thank
that
you.
That sounds so different because I've never heard of submitting it electronically.
Overseas, you can do it.
But not in
I don't know
Minnesota.
Washington is a little more advanced, I think, in some things like that. Maybe.
Great. Well, this election season, we know that 33 states, precisely because of the coronavirus, have made voting early easier. So we are some of the beneficiaries of these changes. Thank you, coronavirus, I guess. Of course not. So I want to go now to the next segment, and we're actually going to spend a little less time here. I'm going to ask only 2 questions. We're going to talk about the candidates and the issues. All of you have voted for Biden. So I would like each of you to tell us what is one thing that you don't like from the Biden agenda, and what is one thing that you do like from the Trump agenda, if anything.
Oh,
I don't feel
from-
prepared for that question.
That's a
from
hard.
Trump, nothing. But Biden, I think we need sanity back in this country. We need to get rid of the chaos. We need some nice, gentle order. And that's probably what I like about him. I'm more progressive than Biden, but we won't fight for the perfect if we can get something that's fine. I guess that's what I'm looking at. So
Yeah, I like.
he'll have progressive enough programs for us. The main thing is just getting some science back into everything. It's just some sane thinking. Not, Trump is just all lies.
Yeah. I liked how Biden in the last debate showed that he is in favor of renewable energy.
Oh,
And that's like this big risk in the United States. People are like, oh my God, renewable energy. That means we're going to be jobless. But he took the stand. He did walk it back a bit, but I like that about him. And I think that's a good thing, having Kamala Harris with them, that they'll push for that. As far as Trump, it's really hard to find, something that, and in fact, I've given him a chance. I've looked at him and thought, where can I find something that I could admire in this man or look toward? And it's just really difficult to find anything that he does. Because when he talks about the economy, I mean, he doesn't care about the average American. He, in terms of the economy, he just wants, the stock market. That's the economy for him.
Thank you,
In
Carolyn.
my case, I think what I like most about Biden is Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Policy, but I like the fact that he's able to talk to different extremes, not the farthest extreme, but he's able to speak across the lines, as they say. And as far as Trump goes, there's no policy I could even come up with of his that I would approve of or like in any way. But there is an element about Trumpism that I think it's not a positive thing, but going back to my my difficulty since Trump was elected, there's an advantage in a way that the Trumpism, the tribalism, I call it here, I have a sense of tribalism in the US, and I think it's also in other countries, that you're either on the right or you're either a Trump supporter or you're a communist or something like that. Or you can look at it from the right hand side, which is, it would be the opposite. And the point is that the one good thing about, it's not a good thing, it's a difficult thing about what's going on right now is that it's come to the surface. All of the racism, the police brutality, the pro-business policies, it's right out on the surface of the water and we can see it. And then hopefully there will be some serious reforms.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for your answers. I want to ask you now something else about the candidates this year, and specifically about Biden relative to Clinton 4 years ago. When we were, when we started this conversation, you were saying that, many of you were saying that you believe that Biden is likely going to win. So the question that I want to ask, any of you can answer this, but the question is, what does Biden have that Clinton didn't have 4 years ago, or how has the context changed?
Likability.
Yeah.
Hillary suffered, despite being an intelligent, prepared woman, suffered from likability. She just somehow didn't connect with the voters. I think Joe Biden connects. I mean, if I had to say one thing, I'd say likability.
I think you're right, likability, but also the Clintons had been under attack by the Republicans for their entire career. So they had so much, they had so many strikes against them politically due to the Republicans that it made it really impossible for her. I think she would have been an excellent president, but I think it would have been very difficult for her to govern because of the attacks. The Republicans have not been able to attack Biden. He's clean. He's been in government for 47 years and he's not corrupt and he's clean.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those assessments. And yeah, I agree with both of those assessments. Biden will do, he's a common guy in the eyes of the nation, even for those people who like Trump. I think there's a likability about him. And Trump hit something on the button 4 years ago. Probably wasn't his idea, it was probably somebody else. But this whole drain the swamp issue, Hillary Clinton represented that in a big way. Hillary was a part of the royalty of politics in the US. She came from politics and she was, and he knew that, and he got under her skin that way. Biden's different.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see if that's enough. Maybe it is. You never know until the last second in these elections, right? So let's move now to the third segment. Yeah, no, hopefully no Comey emails, letters, whatnot. I want to move to the third segment, and this is going to be our longest segment. It's going to be just a little bit longer. And I want to start with a question that is related to something that each of you three said. All of you said, we are progressives. Biden is not progressive enough. Some of you said, I would have preferred to see Bernie Sanders. So, from your point of view, how do I say this? Will progressives vote for Biden? Because that didn't happen 4 years ago. How are you sure that progressives like you are gonna go out to vote for Biden?
Sanders is asking his people to vote for Biden, no doubt. Everyone wants Trump out. Everyone progressive wants Trump out. I mean, even the right, there's a lot of right-wing people. There's many Republicans for Biden now. After the election, everyone will go back to their own houses and fight. But right now, it's against Trump.
I think getting Trump voted out trumps progressivism. So in this moment, progressives will say, okay, I have a different agenda than Biden's pushing. However, number one, vote him out. And I think that will, I hope, progressives will go out and vote in numbers, big numbers.
I was thinking that, again, it's one of the sort of positive outcomes. The United States historically has had very low voting. The eligible population doesn't vote in mass numbers. I can't give you any figures.
Under 50%.
Under 50%, which is actually really similar to Colombia, I believe. And people need to vote. I mean, it's just it's a civic duty. And so this movement that's taking place is really nice to see that people are voting early and they're excited to vote. My family members are all, they've either voted or they're waiting with great expectation to actually do that civic duty. So that's a good thing.
Okay, good. Thank you. Again, to the three of you, I want to ask, let's see if I can fit in 3 more questions before we go to our participants. This is a simple question. Why is the Latino population such an important swing voter population? Why are Republicans and Democrats targeting Latinos? Why do they seem so important in this election?
Well, because 2 of the main states for the Electoral College are Arizona and Florida. And the Latino is a large amount of population in both of those states. And it's not clear. I think often, and I don't know, Washington State does not have a big Latino population that matters in elections anyway. But Latinos can be very conservative in their way of going about the world. One of the main issues in the elections is always abortion, and being very often following the Catholic Church's teaching. That can be a swing issue for Latino voters, I think.
Okay, good. I think that clears it up. Let's try to fit in 2 more questions. One is about how this election season has affected, if at all, your relationship with family and friends.
My friends are all just, we have stomach aches. We're so worried about it. Everyone is so upset, so worried. And we're worried about what might happen just right after the election and in the days after. For example, I'm making some plans with some friends to visit a garden, and none of us want to be away from our neighborhoods right after the election. We don't know what might be happening. We're afraid of violence.
Well, and that's obvious because Donald Trump's an expert at sowing fear and division. He's so good at it, so good at repeating a mantra. He'll just say over and over again, you know, a witch hunt or rig elections. And he puts that in the heads of, you know, his base, which some of them are just riled up to the point of,
He's calling out militias, or well, domestic terrorists, I call them. These different groups of people, the Boogaloo Boys, the Proud Boys, the 3%ers. These are kind of extra, I don't know what you call them, paramilitary or something, with war guns. And he's bringing them out. He's calling them out. Yeah. And who knows what? For what, I don't know, but it could be something.
I didn't want to be in the US during the elections because of some of these fears. I was nervous about it. I'm going to be here till mid-November. And I think it's those fears for North Americans they're not common, but they're very real right now. And I know my close family members are really fearful of what could take place. And I have some distant family who are probably Trump supporters. And unfortunately, there's no dialogue right now with Trump supporters. There's a disconnect. When there is a conversation with a cousin or somebody, the issue of politics is avoided. I think that's a big problem, actually, that we're facing.
I agree. And absolutely, we haven't talked about that, but families are divided just like the country is. I mean, my family, I have a few conservative sisters that love Donald Trump, love him. I can't even talk remotely about politics with them. I wouldn't even approach it because I love them, my sisters. However, can't agree with them.
My father's a Trump supporter. Can't talk to him, and there's no reasoning about it either. You know, there's no common ground.
Well, then this connects with my next question. Is a simple yes or no, and then I'm going to ask my last question, and then we'll go with the great audience questions. So I'm going to go with Tara, then Michael, then Carolyn. Yes or no? Well, actually, it's not yes or no. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the state of polarization in the U.S. in the coming years. Is this the new normal, or is there a chance for optimism? Optimism, pessimistic? Tara, tell us.
I'm very
one.
pessimistic.
Oof, thank you, Michael.
Pessimistic, but leaning towards optimism. I can't get too much worse, I hope.
Thank you, Carolyn. I think we know what you think. You told us at the beginning.
Did I think
The
it's
damage is done.
yeah, I'm pessimistic, but I also
Oh.
think that you have to cut open the wound in order to heal it sometimes.
Great, thank you.
Difficult.
This is the last question that I'm gonna ask. It combines a little bit of fact and foresight. What's going to happen on November 3rd? Will we know the winner? Yes or no? What's going to happen?
We hope we'll know the winner. We hope that so many people vote for Biden that there's no doubt. But if there is doubt, oh my God, what might happen might be violent. I think we could see Trump's people trying to steal the election. I think that's very possible. He put, this new person on the Supreme Court, if he can get it to the Supreme Court to steal it. So I'm really frightened about what might happen. So we don't know.
I agree with you, Tara, but I also think it could be, I'm optimistic that we will know on Tuesday and it will be clear.
We hope so.
It
Yeah.
will be sure, because I think Trump has destroyed his chances with the general public, with COVID, with his racism. I think that there's a minority in the states that are equally as racist and ignorant as he is. Unfortunately, they follow him and they're boisterous, but I think we'll know.
I hope so.
I also think we'll know. I don't think it's going to be the way it was 4 years ago, where people like me were caught so off guard and by surprise. I think we're going to know, and we need to face those consequences too, because it's not going to be pretty.
No, it's not going to be. It won't be easy for Biden even if he wins. But anyway.
Right. We'll especially be looking out for what happens in Florida. We know that Florida is a state that usually, we know the results the night of elections.
Yes.
If
yes.
Biden wins in Florida,
it's very
on
possible.
Tuesday,
yeah.
then we probably will already know. If he doesn't win, then we might have to wait a little bit longer.
But there is a correction there that, there was an election where Florida was not clear. And it went to
Bush and Gore.
So, yeah.
They stole an election in Florida.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I think they're prepared for it this year. They're prepared if it turns into a recount legal battle.
Yeah,
they both have their team.
Governor, what's his name?
The lawyers are ready, but the governor is a super pro-Trump Republican.
Yeah.
It's a scary one.
Right.
It's a scary one.
Well, now we're going to go to our questions from the audience. We have a ton of really good questions. So Maite is actually going to be reading them out. So please, Maite, go ahead.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful discussion. I think the first question by Olga Lucia Navas ties into what you were just talking about. And it relates to what will happen if Trump doesn't win. How is he going to react? Is he going to accept the election results?
He'll try not to. It'll depend. If we're hoping it's so overcome, he's so overcome that he has to accept it, but he will try not to. He has already said many times, if he loses, it was a rigged election. He says that over and over. He's already not accepting.
Yeah.
There's a funny joke in Minnesota because Trump was here maybe 10 days ago, and he told an audience, a supportive audience, that if he loses Minnesota, he's never coming back to the state.
We're hoping.
Of course, everybody said, well, see you later. But he'll do what he can. He'll make a stink, is the way we
He'll do, yeah, he'll do who knows what, but it could be very bad. Yeah.
And a related question, how will some things, and Biden said, how do you think Biden is going to handle the white supremacist groups if he results elected? So if Biden wins, how will Trump react, which you just talked about, and how will Biden handle the white supremacist?
It'll be very law and order, hopefully just with police action, with normal police action. It won't be easy.
Zero tolerance. I think
Yeah.
he'll manage it well.
He'll manage it well.
Biden presumably has good relationships with police chiefs.
Mhm.
They
And
say.
fortunately, Trump has insulted all the military.
Right. So there might be on Biden's heel, yeah.
Can I just add one small thing about what Tara just said? I used to think early on that this was the beginning, the dawn of a state really, that Trump would be a total dictator. And I don't think that anymore. Precisely because of what you said, Tara, he does not have the support of the military. The military, just for our Colombian audience, it traditionally is not political in the United States. And it's been very difficult for the military to be under Trump's rule because he abuses that in many ways, as many ways as he can. So I don't think that he's an authoritarian. He would be a successful authoritarian, and hopefully that's the end of it.
I want to go back maybe to, you were talking about Florida and the contested elections actually from before 2000 and, well, you didn't refer to it as specifically.
2000.
2016, 2000.
2000.
There's a question here that maybe relates to that. Are you worried about the legal or constitutional disputes in any battleground states because
Yes,
of grounds related?
very much so. With governors who support Trump, they're ready with many tricks. Many tricks. Yep, we're very worried.
But you know what? I think the Democrats have their act together, and they're not going to let, the governors. I mean, I think that they're going to defend their right to have a recount if it's necessary or whatever. Trump's the loudest, but I don't know that Biden's got a lot of money behind him and a lot of lawyers. And I think it'll hopefully won't come to that. But
hopefully not. One of the big problems is they're trying to declare the election too difficult to be able to count. They're going to say, oh, the mail-in ballots, they were too messy. We can't count them. And due to that, we can't have our normal election process. And in the case of a Republican governor, he can name the electors. He can name all, for example, Republican electors, even though Biden won the state. There's danger of that. The power balances are not easy, but it's possible. It's possible. So yeah, we're worried.
Going on.
By the way, have we said, I don't know if we've said that the amount of delegates that either candidate needs is 270. When you're watching the elections, you need to watch to see if the candidate has 270 votes in the Electoral College. That's when they win.
Right.
Tara, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a possibility Biden could get those 270 without getting Florida, correct?
Oh yes. So
that
Biden
could eliminate
has
the whole Florida question if that were to happen.
But I think what David said is correct. That's one marker. If we see on the night of the election that Florida went for Biden, that's a very good sign.
Yeah.
It's very difficult without Florida. Yeah, Biden has many different, what they call paths. Biden has many possibilities to get to it. And Trump has very few possibilities to get to the Electoral College. The combinations for him are not so easy.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. If anyone has more questions, feel free. I think we still have time for a couple more, so write them in the chat. But there is one that's very interesting here from Olga Lucia. And it says, in the last few days here in Colombia, there's been people that talk about how the government, our government, Centro Democrático, is influencing the politics in the United States, particularly in Florida. Do you think that could really happen, that they can have a real influence? And it says, what do you think about the press release that the US Embassy did this week? I'm not aware of it. Maybe David knows and he can give us the context related to what Revista Semana published. So
I'm
maybe,
not aware of that.
I don't know if David, if you know a little bit more about this and what's happening with Centro Democrático and some of the statements and give that context.
So as context, right?
Putting you on the spot, I don't know. Yeah.
Just as context, yes, there have been some shows of individual support by members, especially of the Centro Democrático Party, which is the ruling party, including in the presidency. Some senators, some Congress people have talked about showing their they have shown their support to Trump, for Trump. And recently, the U.S. Embassy gave out a statement quoting or citing an article by two Democratic Congress people where the message was basically, don't interfere in our elections, with a little bit of a threat. The idea that the U.S.-Colombia relationship is a bipartisan position and Colombians shouldn't swing one way or another. So I guess that's the context. Now let's hear the end.
Thank you.
I think that those statements are very dangerous because there are many Colombians in the United States, many eligible voters, and it's a very bad policy to try and push any group of people to vote one way or another. And it's what Trump does. It's not a good thing. So the embassy is right to put out a statement.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question directed to Tara Marino. So it says, to check and balance of power, the check and balance of power in the United States seems to work pretty well. So I would like to know if you could explain how Donald Trump could become an authoritarian president, taking into consideration the US constitutional system. So how can he become so powerful?
There are ways he can steal the election constitutionally. It's possible. And so if we're hoping, if all, the problem is, if the voting is very clear and very in favor of Biden, I think we're okay. But if it's not so cut and dried, there's going to be many votes that come in by mail. And the Republicans have 1,000 different ways not to count votes. They say it wasn't clear. They say the writing wasn't clear. Maybe they used a red pen. Maybe they used a blue pen. Maybe they didn't sign their name correctly. Maybe whatever. There's a million ways. So those votes can come into question. If a governor of a state says we can't make a determination who won due to the confusion of votes, the governor can decide who the delegates to the Electoral College will vote for.
And even
it's in Article 15 of the Constitution. If you want to go somewhere in there, they tell me, I haven't looked at it, but it's there.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question to all panelists. Do you think that Roe versus Wade might be overturned? And what could that mean for US people?
It'll be overturned now because the Supreme Court is actually very Catholic. A majority of the Supreme Court follow teachings of the Catholic Church, actually. And they will do that, yeah. The abortion question will go to the states. So right. The states will have their separate laws and rules that will rule. And yeah, who knows where it'll go from there, but that's what'll happen next.
But are you sure about that, Tara? You really think it will be overturned? No doubt. I mean,
I believe so, because the new woman will be the deciding vote, the woman that they just brought in. She's extremely conservative and extremely Catholic, and she has written many things against it. I believe she will. She's written many interesting things. One of the things that she has written that has disturbed me very much, she said this in one of her writings: only virtuous people should be allowed to vote.
Oh.
Yeah.
As an example, she's kind of on a fringe. So well, of course we don't know, but I believe that. But who knows? I could be wrong.
Okay, Thank you. Maybe two more questions, if that's okay. We have one that is asking about maybe foreign relations, which we haven't talked about too much. So if Biden wins, how do you think, what is going to happen with the relations with China is the question.
Who knows? But I know that I've heard that in general, foreign countries, and that includes China, prefer him because he's steady. Trump is never, you never know what Trump's going to do. He never has a policy that he follows through. He's with this way, he's that way. He changes all the time. And in general, foreign countries like at least to know what the bottom line is.
I don't know if maybe anyone else wants to answer that, or if David wants to say something about that, possibly.
I'm happy to talk about this. I guess I'll just give the shortest answer possible, but to be precise, Biden has signaled that he would continue many Trump policies towards China, including the trade war and including, trying to continue the tech war. So we believe that there will be a continuation of that, but Biden has also talked about doing this not alone, not the US alone, but standing by American allies, especially the European allies, Asian allies like Japan and South Korea. So we might see a more effective US policy towards China under Biden.
That makes sense.
Can I ask a question? I'd like to hear from the person who said they would vote for Trump if they could vote, who chimed in at the beginning of the conversation. I'm kind of curious if that person is still here. I don't know who it was. If we've been able to change anybody's mind.
Good question. Did we change anyone's mind from the audience out there?
Hello, I'm still here. Yeah, I am Omar Vera Muniz. I was the one who said that. Okay, well, I appreciate this presentation that you made. However, I think that in most of the cases, most of you talk about feelings. What do you feel? I don't like this, but I think that maybe it will be very nice if we can get some examples about why Donald Trump could not be a very good, could not be a very good president again. You said, for example, I think, Caroline, that he damaged US. I think that you was the one who said it, but you did not give an example about how he made that. Especially if we are talking about foreign policy, will be good for us to hear about that, to know more. And so it's another question that I would like to make to you.
Oh, well, so I think that actually the damage was, you're right. I don't think I gave a concrete answer to that. And the other two panelists, Tara and Michael, referred to things. For example, the environment. Donald Trump was successful in debilitating, crippling our most important environmental organization. His policies have been directed towards business, but not just any business, his businesses in particular. And in the legal aspect, the ability of not Donald Trump, but the Republican Party to install these Supreme Court justices. The last one was just yesterday or the day before, who will have a very, very big effect on the division of power, which was the way the question was posed that Tara answered about the three balances of power have been debilitated to begin with by the Supreme Court justice. I think in foreign policy, the damage is irreparable. And that's with China, that's with the Middle East, that's with Latin America, for sure. And
he fights with our NATO allies.
He's taking money away from the World Health Organization, from NATO. He has what we have.
He took us out of the Paris Accord.
Yeah.
which is the environmental accord. He took us right out of it.
It's just been one thing after another
Mm.
that he's been successful in taking apart. And just to give it a local context, the way the United States is dealing with Colombia in particular, since Trump came into office, has been nothing but eliminating narco trafficking and spraying, going back to a drug policy that hopefully Colombia had moved beyond in terms of international relations with the United States. It's something that is debatable. What does Colombia benefit from Donald Trump? I don't think very much, but I think there are many, many issues. And I really appreciate that you asked that, because that's where we get emotional as North Americans about what's going to happen on Tuesday. It's because all of the things that we have come to think of as normal in politics in the United States is no longer normal.
Yeah, he has a case in the Supreme Court. They're going to discuss it on November 10th to remove health care from about 20 million people.
Yeah.
Those people will be without. That's another policy example that
That's a
I
huge one.
disagree with.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I don't know if we have time for just one more, because it seems quite interesting and relevant, something a little bit different, and it has to do with what's going to happen with the Republican Party if Trump
Oh, that's interesting.
landslide. And will they break apart maybe, or what's going to happen? Will they swing more to the center?
There's much speculation. Many people are writing many articles about that right now. We don't know, but I think that many of the people who have supported Trump will be pariahs. They're not going to find a home in politics.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hypocrisy on parade. Once Trump loses, because we're going to see these Republican people who are backing everything he proposed all of the sudden, come out with new stories about how, they were never really behind his actions.
Oh.
I don't know. I just think it's going to be quite the show.
That's already happening. People who work in his administration are beginning to come out and say, well, I did it because I tried to do it, make things better, but I never agreed with him. You're already seeing that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Who knows where the Republican Party itself will land? There's many ex-Republicans who are good. There's a group that I like a lot called the Lincoln Project.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a group of excellent Republicans that have been working against Trump. They're going to continue.
I
Follow
love-
them if you like something. Interesting Republicans are the Lincoln Project.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Finally, I sent in the chat a survey. It's a short survey. We would very much appreciate your feedback on the session. Any feedback was very much welcome, so please complete that. And also to say that tomorrow we have a follow-up event. We have a very good event with—
Let me do that. I'm going to do.
Phil, go for it. Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to all our wonderful panelists tonight. It's been a wonderful debate, and great to be able to have this platform to share these views and to give us this wonderful insight into this truly historic moment. Thank you very much to David for skillfully guiding us through this through these stormy waters. And thank you, Maite, for organizing this whole thing and for putting
Thank you, Phil. You have a lot to do with all of this organization.
It's been a really wonderful event. And yes, as Maite was saying before I so rudely interrupted, we do have another event tomorrow, which you'll be very, very welcome to come, where we're going to be focusing specifically on the US Supreme Court and particularly the legacy of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So you'll be very much welcome if you'd like to join us there. The registration link for that, if you're not already following us, please follow us. We are Externado English on Facebook. also Instagram and Twitter. We always send all the information about our events there. So if you'd like to join us tomorrow, 6 o'clock for the battle over the US Supreme Court, please do come and join us. You'll be very welcome indeed. Okay, so I'd like to once again say thank you to all our panelists, and of course, not least, thank you to everyone who has participated and joined us today as part of our wonderful audience. It's been great to have you here. We hope to see you in our future events, and have an excellent evening. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks, I suppose.
Let's hope it's good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.